Coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. Welcome to the Sports Wagering Zone on this Sunday morning. Week 2 of the NFL season is on tap for today. Anyway, thanks for listening. Just to give you an idea, we're coming to you live right here from Denver, the Mile High City, on I-95, the Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your podcast platforms, most of your more famous ones like Spotify or Apple Podcast, or, there's quite a few of them out there that we're involved in. iHeartRadio, just to name a few. Anyway, once again, thanks for listening. Like we said, it's week 2 of the NFL season. We're going to take a up close and personal look at 4 games on tap for today, seeing which direction the pros are going, and of course, which direction the money is flowing, and the line movement as well. We've got San Francisco against Philadelphia, the Buffalo Bills down in Miami, the Rams against the Colts, and of course the Vikings against the Cardinals. Those are the 4 games that we're going to take a look at. We're going to go over what happened yesterday. Let's bring you up to date as to how the pros did yesterday as far as college football is concerned. We'll give you that report as well. But to begin with, as always, we talk about what happened yesterday. And yesterday in Major League Baseball, the favorites went 8-7, including the Cardinals with a -120 win over the Padres, winning their 7th straight game. The day's biggest upset was by the Diamondbacks at +250 against the Astros. The favorites still lead at 59.4% as a win percentage for the season, and the unders went 8-6-1 yesterday with a push on the Mariners Royals at 9. And of course, that increased their slim lead that they've got to 50.2% from 50.1% yesterday. But we'll keep you up to date with those numbers so that this way, if you're keeping record yourself, it's a good idea to kind of get an idea as to which direction things are flowing. Meanwhile, as far as college football is concerned, Fresno State upset number 13 UCLA. Big upset, 40-37 last night as a 10.5-point road underdog and a +330 on the money line. The game went over the betting total of 65 points as well. Also, late in a matchup of the top 25 teams, number 23 BYU, a 3-point underdog, and a +135 on the money line, upset number 19 Arizona State 27-17. Because earlier in the day, number 1 Alabama, being a 14-point favorite, once again failed to cover after holding off number 11 Florida 31-29. Number 10 Penn State, as a 4-point favorite, did cover as it held off number 22 Auburn 28-20. Now, the day's biggest upset of a top 25 team before the UCLA action was that number 24 Miami of Florida, losing 38-17 to Michigan State. Michigan State was a 7-point underdog and a +215 on the money line. And just to give you an idea as to how some things happen, like we talk about, there are little schools that are playing games as well, and of course the sports books look at these, they come up with lines and things of that nature. Well, here's one where you can, as you look at, you'll see what I'm talking about, where they don't do as well, okay, in picking the numbers with some of these teams, okay, because out there in the Big Sky Conference, Northern Arizona University, okay, again, most people probably haven't really heard of them, okay? They're in the Big Sky Conference, and they upset a team from the Pac-12, Arizona, 21-19. They were a 27-point road underdog and a plus 1950. That's 1,950 on the money line. So it kind of give you an idea if you can kind of filter through, see some of those small games that most people haven't heard of. Those are the ones that you can usually, if you go in the right direction, of course, you can pick up some good money on those things as well. So that's the story as far as college football. And of course, yesterday, just to give you a report on how the pros didn't have such a good day yesterday. We had 4 plays, and out of those 4 plays, we had 3 losers. The only winner being Alabama against Florida. Miami was the choice against Michigan State, and we just told you that upset Michigan State. USC against Washington State. USC beat Washington State in that game. And, of course, in the Penn State game, we had the other choice. We had Auburn in that game as well. So 4 choices yesterday, 3 losses. Now, remember, the week before, we had 4 choices, and we had 4 winners. So, just all depends on how things go. So, again, now it's at 60%, whereas before it was 83%. Altogether, now we've had 10 plays. 6 of them were winners. So now the pros settle in at that 60% number, which is really where they are most of the time. And they're going to go up and down a little. They're going to have really great days, and of course they're going to have some bad days, but it's all going to come together somewhere around 60%. So that's the story with college football. Now it's time to start talking about NFL. So we're going to take our first break, and when we do come back, we're going to take a look at 4 games. Like I said, we're going to take an up close and personal look at San Francisco and Philadelphia, Buffalo and Miami, the Rams and the Colts, the Vikings and the Cardinals. So just to give you an idea, we're going to take our first break. And if you've listened to the show before, we take each break for 1 minute's duration, and we only take 3 breaks within the show. So if that's the case, we'll be back looking at the NFL right after this. And here we go again. Welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. It's Sunday morning, regardless of what time zone you happen to be in. Right now, you're in the sports wagering zone. We're here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And of course, during the week, Monday through Friday, we're here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as well. So we're also on mostly major podcast platforms like Apple Podcast or Spotify or even iHeartRadio. So that's the story as far as where and how you can get a hold of us. So if you have any questions or you have any comments, very simply, just kind of put it in an email and send it to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. That's the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. So in the meantime, let's see where the money's going on these 4 games in the NFL for today. Now, after we get finished telling you how the pros are going in these games, we're going to come back once again, and we're going to take a look and see how Chris Andrews came up with the various numbers and how these houses come up with the numbers for these 4 particular games as well. So at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, You got the San Francisco 49ers flying from the West Coast to the East Coast to play the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, both of these NFC teams are coming off of wins after week one. The 49ers are 1-0 straight up, but they're 0-1. They did not cover the spread in their game last week. They beat the Lions 41-33, although they failed to cover because they were 9.5-point road favorites in that game, and they came pretty close to almost losing that game as well. In the meantime, the Eagles, they're 1-0 as well, straight up, but they're 1-0 against the spread. They dominated. I mean, they just beat up on them Falcons. The Birds were really flying, 32-6. They won outright. They were 3.5-point road dogs in that game. Now, as we look at the line in this game, it opened with San Francisco, a 3.5-point road favorite. The public, well, they're happy to lay the points with those high-flying 49ers. However, the line has really fallen on the 49ers, went from being a 3.5 to a 3-point favorite. And what this usually means is that it's a sharp reverse line movement on the Eagles, with the pros coming in on Philadelphia plus the hook at 3.5 at home. So the pros in this game on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, San Francisco has to overcome the challenge of being that West Coast team that travels east for a 1 p.m. game. Understand, as far as their body is concerned, it's not going to be 1 p.m., okay? It's going to be more like 10 a.m. possibly, okay? So, oftentimes, it screws up the body clocks of the players. San Francisco's also playing their second straight road game. Haven't played at home yet, which can be a kind of difficult schedule spot for them as well. Now, Brad Allen, the lead referee, well, historically, he favors the home teams. He's at 55% in that way. But as far as the pros are concerned, they like the Eagles in this game and taking the 3 to 3.5 points. Also at 1 o'clock, the Buffalo Bills travel down to Miami to play the Dolphins. Now, the Bills dropped their season opener to the Steelers last week, if you remember, 23-16. They lost outright as 6.5-point home favorites. In the meantime, those pesky Dolphins, they walked into Foxborough and they upset the Patriots 17-16 as 3.5-point road dogs. As we look at the line in this game, it opened with Buffalo, a 3.5-point home favorite. The public says the Bills are a great team. They have to bounce back, and they should be rolling on to Miami. However, there's always a however, despite this lopsided betting pattern, we've seen the line remain steady at 3.5. In fact, some shops look to be inching down to 3 in some places. Now, this signals some sharp line freeze, okay, and a possible reverse line movement buying low on the Dolphins, especially at 3.5 with the hook. Now, Miami has value. They're a contrarian home divisional dog, and divisional dogs often bark loudest because they have that built-in familiarity, because it kind of levels the playing field, because they play these teams within their own conference year after year after year. They've been into their stadiums. They understand. The crowd has been there. They have a general idea, and generally speaking, they do have that slight advantage. Divisional dogs, so far this season and over the past 10 years, are 60% against the spread as we see it. So in this game, we're looking at the Miami Dolphins and the Bills. The pros are on the home team, the Miami Dolphins. Also at 1 o'clock, you got the Rams against the Colts. This is a non-conference game. It's one of the ultimate buy low, sell high plays of week 2 of the NFL. The Rams crushed the Bears 34-14 on Sunday night. Easily. They covered. They were 9.5-point home favorites in that game. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Colts, well, they lost to the Seahawks 28-16. They didn't cover as 3-point home dogs. Now, the line opened with Los Angeles, listed as a 4-point road favorite. The public can't believe it. They say, wow, this is just can't understand it. The line is so low, and they're rushing to the window to lay the points with the Rams, expecting that easy blowout win and an easy cover as well. But once again, despite this lopsided betting toward Los Angeles and the Rams, the line has remained steady at 4 as a -4 4-point favorite, and even some houses drop down to 3.5. Now, this means that some pros kind of believe there's liability on the Colts, so they're taking the Colts in this game. The Rams are also, they're in a tough schedule spot here, too. They're a West Coast team, and they're going east also. Not as far as New York or Boston, but they are going into Indiana, which is kind of quite a distance, 2 hours difference as far as going back and forth. So the Rams are also in that tough schedule spot, okay? And of course, it is a 1 o'clock game. That's what even makes it tougher. For a 4 o'clock game, it wouldn't be as bad. Now, Indianapolis is one of the top contrarian plays of the week. 75% of the money, the tickets coming in, are riding with the Rams. So in this game, the pros are on the Colts. So look at the 3 games we looked at so far. The Eagles against the 49ers at 1 o'clock. The pros are on the Eagles. The Dolphins and the Bills in Miami. 1 o'clock game. The pros are on the Dolphins. And also at 1 o'clock in Indianapolis, the pros are on the Colts against the Rams. So we're going to take our second break. When we come back, we're going to look at the 4 o'clock game, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Arizona Cardinals. So just to give you an idea, once again, break number 2, 60 seconds. We will be back in 1 minute. And here we go again. Welcome back. You're back in the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you for listening. We're coming to you live right here from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. We're here every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, you name it, you can find us just about anywhere. So we're talking NFL action. It's NFL Sunday, week 2. In case you tuned in late, let's take a look at the first 3 games that we looked at. We checked on the line movement as well as seeing which direction the pros are going in these games. The first game at 1 o'clock, San Francisco, Philadelphia. The pros in this game are on Philadelphia. They kind of feel Frisco going across the coast. It's a 1 o'clock game. That's one thing that may be against them in this game. The pros are on the Eagles. The Bills and the Dolphins, the pros are on the Dolphins in this game. And the Rams also moving from the West Coast, not as far east, but as far as Indiana anyway. They're also going to be a little time zone situation. It's a 1 o'clock game. The pros in this game are on the Colts. Finally, at 4:05 p.m., and of course, that's Eastern time. Minnesota Vikings, the Arizona Cardinals. You know, the public perception of these teams couldn't be more different. Well, the Vikings, they just fell to the Bengals. We know what we think about the Bengals, 27-24, losing outright. They were 3-point road favorites in that particular game. Meanwhile, the Cardinals looked unstoppable. They were dominant in that victory over the Titans, 38-13, winning outright as 2.5-point road dogs. As we look at the line in this game, it opened with Arizona, a 4.5-point home favorite. The public is pounding the Cardinals. They looked far better in week 1 than the Vikings did. So in that situation, they're leaning towards the Cardinals. However, the line has dropped. It went from 4.5 to 3.5, signaling what we call a reverse line movement on the road dog, the Minnesota Vikings. Keep one thing in mind. Short road dogs of 6 points or less are 6-1 against the spread this season. Okay. And last season at this time, they went 61%. So kind of keep that in mind. Short road dogs, 6 points or less, and Minnesota falls into that category. Now, dogs that missed a playoff the year before, like Minnesota, went 9-2 against the spread in week number 1. So in this game between the Vikings and the Cardinals, the pros definitely on the Minnesota Vikings. So those are the 4 games that we're looking in depth into. There are also some other moves that happened that we're going to make you aware of in case you're not betting any of these games we just talked about, but you might be betting the games that we're going to talk about now. Just quickly, just to give you an idea about some line movement in these games. In the Saints-Panthers game, 46.5 was the point total, dropped down to 44.5. In the game between the Bengals and the Bears, the Bengals were 3-point dogs. They now dropped down to a 2.5-point dog against the Bears. The Raiders-Steelers game, the under 48 dropped down to 46.5. The Patriots and the Jets, the Patriots were 3.5-point favorites. They are now 6-point favorites against the Jets. The Falcons and the Bucks, the under 53 went down to 51.5. The Titans and the Seahawks, the over in that game was at 53, moved up to 54. The Chargers and the Cowboys, the over in that game went from 52 to 55. And then finally, the Chiefs were 2.5-point favorites over the Ravens, are now at 3.5. So once again, just to recap the 4 games we talked about earlier, the pros are on the Eagles against the 49ers. In the Bills-Dolphins game, the pros are on the Dolphins. In the Rams-Colts game, the pros are on the Colts. And in the Vikings-Arizona Cardinals game, the pros in that game are on the Minnesota Vikings. So those are the situations. And just to give you an idea, last week, just so you'll have put everything into perspective, last week we had altogether, we had 6 plays, okay? And out of those 6 plays, we had 5 winners, and that's 83%. So now you may look at it just like we did with the colleges. Last week in the college program, we were at 83%, had a terrible day yesterday, dropped it down to 60. So you might want to think about it in that direction. So you can either do one of three things. You can either go along with them and say, they're hot, so let me stay with them. Or you can say, hey, I think they peaked already. It's time for them to pick some losers, and you can go against them, or you can just leave the games alone totally. Again, we leave that decision up to you. So let's take our final break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look and see what Chris Andrews has to say about these four games, how these lines developed. Once again, it's just a way of learning how to try to be ahead of the sports book. You'll see how these lines developed, how they started, what made them move, and that's of most importance if you're going to be betting in these situations. So let's get that final break out of the way, and we'll be back in 1 minute. And here we go again. Welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live right here from the Mile High City in Denver, Colorado. Thank you very much for listening. We're coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Also podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it, we're there. Okay. We talked about four games earlier, how the pros are looking at them and which direction their money is going to be going. So now let's take a look and see how some of these lines developed according to Chris Andrews, who is the top guy in Vegas. Okay. He says week 2 got off to a good start for the sports books. The Giants covered against Washington Thursday night. And of course, it would have been better if they won the game outright. But he says can't complain about the result. It's great to see such an enthusiastic market so far this season. So he says, let's take a look at some of the games today. And the first game we're going to take a look at is going to be Buffalo against Miami, one of the games we talked about. Buffalo, a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under 47.5. They're playing in Miami. Now, he says this is a good two-way action at Buffalo at 3.5. It was 3 for a while after the first bet he took was from a sharp or a pro on Miami. Now, recreational bettors, they love Buffalo in this bounce-back situation. His highest ticket count right now is on the Bills, but pro bettors are taking Miami with the hook at 3.5. Now, some may be waiting to see if they can even get to 4 before kickoff time. The pros and the bookmakers are going to be rooting for the same team here. Very little action on the total so far. The Rams against Indianapolis, with Rams being a 3.5-point favorite and the over-under being at 47.5. Now, in this game, he says, I opened the Rams as a 4-point favorite. Pros took the Colts pretty aggressively. I've been at 3.5 since. My ticket count is overwhelmingly on the Rams. The public watched the Colts get crushed by Seattle. Then the Rams bullied the Bears out. But the Sharps really love Indianapolis at +4. Sportsbooks will have to leverage their positions knowing that that's what's going on. Odds makers have known for years It's better to be positioned with the pros rather than against them. That's why we follow them. Doesn't work every time. Nothing works every time. Works more than enough to justify that risk. His opening total was 47.5. He says they bet me over pretty good, so I went to 48 late yesterday. So in this particular game, once again, pros are on Indianapolis. San Francisco at Philadelphia. Frisco, a 3-point favorite, over under at 49. Another good betting game here, he says. I opened San Francisco as a 4-point favorite. Pros took the Eagles at +4. Then they took the Eagles at 3.5 as he dropped it down. I'm at 3 right now, and I can see it's trending lower across the market. I also took a big money line bet on the Eagles at percent plus money. Now, that's down to also some plus money that dropped as well. Obviously, the pros were very impressed with Philadelphia's blowout of Atlanta last week. Not a fluke if you look at the stats. Look at them real close. You teaser fans should keep an eye on this one, especially throughout this entire day. Should San Francisco drop to 2.5, a new option, Philadelphia at +8.5 as a teaser would enter the two-team 6-point teaser window. Now, of course, a line of San Francisco at -2.5 would bring in a lot of 49ers money as well. Now, the market could get extremely interesting before kickoff time. On the total, he says, I took a big early bet on the under, my opener of 50. Now he's at 49. So, and finally, Minnesota against Arizona, with Arizona being a 3.5-point favorite, the over-under being at 50. He says, I opened Arizona as a 4-point favorite. First bet was a pretty good size wager on the Vikings, so he dropped it down to 3.5. The market has been laying Arizona 3.5 on the minus side since. I have a feeling I'll be back to Arizona at -4 very soon. I'm not getting anything on the Vikings at +3.5. The ticket count is very heavy toward Arizona. Maybe the pros will take +4 if and when it does come back. Now, a lot of play on this total. He opened it at 51. One guy bet under for a lot of money. Didn't say how much, but a lot. So he dropped it down to 50. Had to be a lot for him to do that. We've been getting good playback on the over 50. He says, I have a feeling we're going to finally settle at 50.5. So those are the 4 games that we talked about as far as which direction the pros are going. This is how those lines develop. This way, by watching, listening to these situations, you'll get a good idea as to the techniques, the methods that are used. But more than that, as I just got finished saying, the total respect that the sports books have for the pros. In other words, which way the pros go, they pay attention to them. They move that line towards or away depending on where the pro money is going. So just again, want to recap the 4 games for today and the direction that the pros are going. In San Francisco against Philadelphia, Philadelphia being a 3-point dog, maybe 3.5. And again, one thing to keep in mind, the numbers we're talking about as far as the point spreads are out of Las Vegas. Now, if you're in New York, or if you're in Colorado, or if you're in Mississippi, you could have different numbers. So check with, not going to be much different. You may have a half a point here or there. That half a point could be very big, depending on which direction you're going. So San Francisco, Philadelphia, pros are on Philadelphia. The Bills against Miami, the pros are on Miami at 3.5 as a 3.5-point dog. And, of course, the Rams and the Colts, they like the dog Colts in this game as well at 3.5. And finally, the Vikings and the Cardinals. Big money, a lot of money being bet in this game. Many tickets, 75% of them coming in on the Cardinals, but the pros like the Vikings at 3.5. And as you just heard what we read about from Chris Andrews, it may even go to 4 before game time. And, that's when the pros will really pounce on that one. So if that happens, it's going to move back down to 3.5 very, very quickly. So that's the story for today. Week 2 of the NFL season. It's Sunday. It's time to get together with your family and friends once again, like yesterday. Have a good time. Have some good drinking time, get some good food together, watch the NFL games. You got a lot of them going on all day, all through until 8 o'clock this evening. So, again, have a very pleasant day on Sunday. And of course, it could become more pleasant if you have a profitable day as well. So, if you're going to bet any of the games today, whether it's football or baseball or golf or whatever, I certainly hope you have a very profitable day. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we could try to help you to go in that direction. So that's the story about today. We'll be back again tomorrow. And just as a reminder, Monday through Friday, we're here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of the podcast platforms such as Google, Apple, Spotify, you name it. We're there for you as well. So until Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm Chris Pardo coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network from the Mile High City. We'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Have a great day, but more importantly, have a profitable one as well. Goodbye, everybody.